Firstly, I apologise for the audio in the last video. On review, I noticed that my performance was definitely lacking. I'm not used to public speaking, so all I can say is bear with me. I've been tweaking other settings, as people from my last videos can see. Anyway, I do apologise. So what I'm going to do is a review of all the basic scripting we've covered so far. So let's just start right off again from the beginning. Go to Unity. We're not even going to save this scene. We're going to create a new scene and no. So we'll make a new scene, clear our console. So we're starting again. We'll create a JavaScript. We call it basic scripting review. Okay, I'm going to copy that. So now let's save our scene. Okay. Now we'll create game object, create an empty game object. We'll name that basic scripting review. We'll zero out its position. That's where I like it. Okay. And while highlighting that object in the hierarchy window, drag our basic scripting review script onto that object. Double click that. Okay. So we have our default script. First, we create a couple of global variables. We'll make these public so they can be seen in the inspector and by other scripts. So we'll create public variable my timer. Our timer is going to be of type float. So we typecast that to a float. And we can also assign a value when we initialize. So our float will equal 0. I just denote it that way so you can see that it is a float. And also when you make a move to C#, it's not difficult to see this and add. Anyway, C# is another story, and I will be talking about that in the future. Now, we'll create another public variable, something we can set in the inspector. And we're going to name this timer max. Okay, this will also be of type float. And we can set this now. We can call this 5. Well, let's make floats work like floats. 4.5, there we go. So we've initialized our variables up here when we've declared them. We've assigned them a value here. So we don't have to do that in the start. And we're also leaving the option to modify these variables in the inspector. If we modify these variables here, and whatever we put in the inspector will be lost. So we're going to leave any initialization to here in the script or in the inspector, not in the start. Okay. We learn about what type of functions are built in, and we also found out how to make our own functions. So we're going to make our own function here now. Now we want this to happen every update, so let's call that function from the update. And what are we going to do in our function? Let's take our variable and let's increment it. Let's take itself, we're going to add to itself. This time we're going to add to itself time dot delta time. And of course, we can check the Unity scripting reference for that. So I've introduced a new command. So let's look at time. There's a lot of results there, but we can glean out time delta time. As I say, you can read all of these definitions just by clicking on them. We have time delta time. The time in seconds it took to complete the last frame, the last cycle. So when update ran, and then it ran again, what was that time? How long did it take to do that? So this is a basic real-time counter. Time. So what are we going to do? In every update, we're going to increase our timer. We're going to increase our timer by the amount of time between each frame. So this will be a real-life, real-time time counter. So now we want to check a condition. We want to check if our timer has reached and is greater than, if it is greater than or equal to our max timer. So if our timer has counted up and it's equal to or has gone past our timer max value, what do we want to do? We want to know about it. So we can send ourselves messages to the console. So we can tell ourselves that our timer has reached its maximum limit, and then we can also modify that variable. So there we go. We have created some global variables, and they are public, so they can be modified in the inspector. And we've created a function. We're going to call that function, and within our function we're going to change the value of our variable. We're going to check a condition of our variable. We're going to check it against something else, and then if that is returned true, we're going to output and we're going to modify some information. Let's just save that, go back to our scene, let it compile. We'll check our objects. Yes, we have our variables that are public appearing in our inspector. Now for example, if I change this value here to 2.5, this value does not change in the script. More importantly, when Unity builds your project out, it will use the last values it recognizes in the inspector. It will not use the values in the script. So if you wish to use the values in the script, reset, and then you are using the script values. If you make changes in the inspector and you like these values, do not reset, and Unity will compile with your inspector values. Okay, so we'll save that scene because we've made changes. Now we hit play and we'll check our console. We have a timer here which we can watch because we made it public for that. Say we can even start it off at 6 or some other float value, and it should still work. There we go, it maxed out because we started at maxed, and you saw it, zeros, and it starts to count to 2.5. When it reaches 2.5, it lets us know, and it also resets the timer. We can change this on the fly. We can watch and count to 5 seconds now. You see that timer is incrementing. If I clear the console, 3, 4, there we go. Our timer is resetting. So this is what we've learnt in some basic scripting. Variables, functions, debugging, different types of variable. We know how to typecast our variables. We have an idea of how conditionals work. Now, let's just have a look at Unity itself and some of the things involved in these game objects. Okay. When you create an empty game object, you will see it is a game object, but it comes with a transform component. Now in Unity this is a very special relationship. You pretty much cannot have a game object without a transform, and you cannot have a transform without being associated to a game object. So these are two fixed, what we call components. Okay, that makes our game object. So what else can we do to our game object? Well, we added a script to a game object. So a script essentially is a component. It is a component of the game object. It has a name. It is of type basic scripting. Okay? So this is where typecasting is starting to make sense, not only so we can access scripts, but we can also access other components. For example, if we wanted to access the position of the transform component, we would typecast to a variable. My transform would be of type transform. And then we could ask that variable, my transform.x, what are you? And it will tell us. My .x is 1.50777. Okay? So this is something about components. Now, there are a lot better people that have explained it than I. So I'm going to bring you back to one of the first bookmarks we created, the local Unity documentation link. Okay? And we're going to have a look down here at reference. Okay? And immediately, again, we're presented with a lot of information. There's a lot of interesting things that you can find out here in the reference manual, not specifically the user manual. Again, there's another reference manual. It talks about different components that can be added to game objects. We have audio components. Okay, so as soon as you start digging, there's a lot of information here which we will slowly get through some of the things and get you familiar with using Unity. Physics components. We have rigid bodies. We have colliders. All these fun things to look forward to. Okay? The components in general, we can check the reference. Start with components. Oh gosh. And again, it's pretty much the list I was showing you before. So as I said and demonstrated, just look at some of the main components. We have animation components. There's some information there. Of course, that would be different for the Unity 4.x. Okay. Audio. We have some lighting effects, flares. A lot of things to do with textures, text, and GUI assets. Said audio. All these components that can be added to a game object and can be accessed and stored in variables by typecasting. Here's a good one to start. This one's pretty much saying what I'm trying to say. Creating game objects and all these types of components that can be attached to a game object, which then can be accessed through script, referenced, and stored in a typecast variable. Okay, so that's the end of my little scripting guide, but there is plenty more to carry on with. If you go to your search engine and type in Unity 3D Student, type in Unity 3D Student, you should see the first link here. This I thoroughly recommend to all new users if your internet is faster than mine. And when you get there, you should see this page. Okay, to help you browse through where to start, click on Modules. Unity 3D Student. From the main search result, click on Modules, and you will be presented with this page. Scroll down to the bottom of the Modules page, and you'll see the numerically ordered ascending. So start at the bottom and work up. This is a great introduction into getting around Unity and all these components, game objects, and it will add some scripts and then use these scripts to interact with components as I've been describing. Now I'm going to be doing more of that, but as I said, this is an excellent resource. I'd recommend it to anybody that just starts Unity. Even if you don't understand most of it, you will explore, you will see different parts of Unity getting clicked, exposed, and used and presented. this will show you just some of the things that are inside, just waiting to be played with and added to your projects. Okay, so as a review of that search that worked, Unity 3D Student. In the main search results, click where it says Modules. Scroll to the bottom of the page and then watch each video. They're much shorter than mine, only about 5 minutes each. And there's your homework. Okay, see you soon.